Okay.
I'm sorry, we'll shut up, so I can.
Well, we appreciate all y'all coming out tonight. We are in our 18th year, and this is possible because of a lot of different people. Our treasurer, Bart Peters, Secretary Jenna Williams, our VP of Data Search and Hospitality, Chris O'Connor. And let me tell you, she is planning an absolutely fantastic Data Search this year. You do not want to miss out. We're doing it in person again, and I mean, it's Chris. You know that you're going to have a good time when Chris is around. We've also got our VP of Membership and Registration, Kevin Adams, our VP of Sponsorship, Gordon Pearson, our VP of Communications, Casey Watkins, and our board member at large, Tim Shane. So if you want to help out with DFWSEM, whether it's Data Search or one of our committees, or if you don't like the emails that we send and you want to send emails too, come and join us. You can talk to any one of the board members, or you can email info@DFWSEM. And a big thank you to City Central, who sponsors us and lets us have these meetings in this beautiful building. So if you're looking for a co-working space, we highly recommend them. And then the last call for speakers is coming up. So if you think that you have what it takes to be a speaker at Data Search, you should sign up. You should pitch to us. Give us your best shot, and maybe you'll be selected. So you can do that, and you can buy tickets at datasearch.org. Members are always going to save more, so if you're interested in any of our membership options, go ahead and reach out to Kevin at membership@dfwsem.org. And if you're looking to hire or you're looking for a job, go ahead and leverage the DFWSEM's job board. We update it regularly. Just email info@dfwsem and we'll post your job for you. Get a couple more eyes on that. So coming up in May, we have our speaker, Tim Vasquez. The name of his talk is YouTube is Full of, I like to say, it. And he's going to provide us with a lot of different hacks on YouTube, on SEO. So not going to want to miss out, because one of those can do wonders for your business. And then June, we've got Chris Silversmith coming to speak about Twitter optimization for search and social media. So double whammy that you don't want to miss there. But with that, I will hand it over to Jeff.
Awesome. I am so thrilled. Okay, do I need to stay in a certain place to be on camera for these guys? You'll follow me? Okay. And
It'll be okay now. Is it okay now?
is it okay? So I'm thrilled. Chris and I go way back to my, like before I left the news days. So my story is I was a television reporter for 25 years, Lansing, Michigan, Omaha, Nebraska, Minneapolis, Minnesota, 4 cold years. And finally I got the sense to move to Texas. So I got here in 92. Does anybody remember when the Cowboys were good? Anybody? Raise your hand. Ask your parents. So 92 was a good little Super Bowl run. I was almost like, hey, where are we going next year? Where's the Super Bowl again? So it's been a long dry spell. But I spent 15 years total at Fox 4 here in Dallas. Won some Emmy Awards, helped free an innocent man from prison, did some cool stuff in my news career. But the most exciting thing that happened during my news career was I wrote a book. And if you'll hold it up, he's got one of the rare original copies. Yeah. So that book, what he has is so, I never see it when people come up and give me a copy of my book or show me a copy of the book. That was the original 3,000 that we printed. It was self-published. Since then, we had another self-publishing operation reprint the book, and to date, I sold 70,000 copies of the book, legit, just $10. I sold 70,000 copies, so that was my side hustle. And since then, I've given away 25,000 copies for free. And now I'm not even reprinting the book. Why? Because people are like, Jeff, is this your son? So anyway, what I was doing, and this comes to like marketing tip number 1. I was marketing in the best way you could possibly market a business, speaking. They always say in the speaking world, it's not the 10 people in this room, it's the 50 people that each one of you knows very well. So I went on this blistering pace of 300 speeches a year for 6 straight years, in addition to my TV job. Breakfast speech, lunch speech, go to work at Fox 4. Breakfast speech, lunch speech, go to work at Fox 4. It's a do-it-yourself book. What I was doing, I hadn't intended to lay the groundwork for a PR firm. I really wanted to stay in TV news forever. That was always my dream. I was going to be the next Dan Rather or Peter Jennings or whoever my hero was at the time. But then I noticed I was getting more joy out of speaking and connecting with groups than I was the news. Why? Because most nights I'd come into Channel 4 at 2 in the afternoon. They would be in their afternoon meeting and they say, all right, Jeff, we're getting our butts beat by Channel 8. There was a double homicide in Mansfield. We haven't put anybody on it yet. There's no video, no sound bites. We'll see you on the 10 o'clock news. And here I'm trying, at 2 in the afternoon, trying to play catch up to Channel 8, who's been on it all day. And then somehow I'd pull a rabbit out of the hat and at least do a decent story for the 10 o'clock news. I asked my boss one time, I said, how come you give me the worst story? And you send Melissa Cutler to City Hall. Why do you give me the worst assignment? And they said, Jeff, we know you'd always, run through walls for us. We knew you were the only guy who could do it. So what you're going to hear is a consistency in my life. This devotion to excellence, this devotion to, if you're going to do something, just kill it. And so I killed it on the speaking circuit. And I'm signing books. I mean, imagine 70,000 signatures on books because I sold all of those books out of the trunk of my car. I would reprint them for $1.77 and I'd sell them for 10. So 500% profit, not too bad. I kept getting the same thing. People were either complaining about their PR firm. They had spent all this money with this PR firm last year and they got them one measly cover, article in the Dallas Business Journal. So they're mad at their PR firm, or they're like, hey, Jeff, I could buy you a little $10 do-it-yourself book, but I'm not going to do any of this stuff. I'm not going to call the Dallas Morning News. I'm not going to call the Wall Street Journal. Let me just hire you. I said, nah, I can't take your money. Can I tell you what to do for free? Yeah, tell me what to do for free. All right, what are you trying to promote? They would tell me, and then on the spot, I would do this. Oh, that's a rags to riches story. Okay, Cheryl Hall is a business columnist with the Dallas Morning News. She writes a lot for the Sunday, and some of her stuff gets picked up by the Associated Press. Why don't you call her up, use my name, say Jeff Curley recommended that you call her, and then tell her the rags to riches story on the phone, tell her the rags to riches story on the phone, but emphasize the rags. Riches, it's self-evident. That's the boring part. Rags, that's the interesting part. And then 4 days later, they call me up on a Sunday and they say, Jeff Curley, you're a genius. Do you get the Sunday Dallas Morning News? Go out on the driveway, pick up the Dallas Morning News Sunday. At the time, it was 700,000 people read that thing. Remember when papers came to your front door? They would say, you're a genius. I'm on the front page of the Sunday Dallas Morning News. My phone is blowing up. You're a genius. If you ever start a PR firm, I want to be your very first client. So I kept hearing this and hearing this. And at the ripe old age of 45, it was 25 years in the business. I wasn't getting any younger. I'm doing murders and fires every night at Channel 4. And so I asked my wife's permission to quit, and I made the very bold decision to walk away from a fairly lucrative job at Channel 4. I was making, you're gonna hear, I'm a transparency guy, so I was topping out at about $135,000 a year at Channel 4. That's about as much as a local news reporter can make in this market. Sean Rabb, who's been there now for 30 years, he probably makes 160. But frankly, I was getting to the point where I was kind of scared about how much money I was making because they started hiring kids out of Waco at 23 at $30,000 and $40,000. And all I needed was a new news director to come in and say, why are we paying this Curley guy 135? We could get 3 people from Waco for this guy. So I was kind of scared at the money I was making. And I never wanted to leave on a bad note. So got my wife's permission to quit. I quit. I start my company in my home in 2008, and I didn't even know what a PR firm charges. I had to ask, hey, what does a PR firm charge? I called a friend of mine. She says, man, it's all over the map here in Dallas. She was a mom at home with 2 kids in the next room calling herself a PR firm. She says, I charge $2,000 a month. But the Richards Group that at the time had Chick-fil-A, who knows how many hundreds of thousands of dollars they're charging Chick-fil-A. It's all over the map here in Dallas, Jeff. So I said, well, I don't want to devalue 25 years in the business and the guy who literally wrote the book on free publicity. I said, I'll start out at $3,000. I'll start out at $3,000 a month. And so almost immediately, 10 clients lined up. So I'm making $30,000 a month in my boxer shorts, calling reporters and putting out press releases and stuff. Second year, 20 clients paying me $3,000 a month. $60,000 a month, no overhead, no bills to pay. Pretty soon it was more than one guy could do. So I had to start hiring people. And so employee number 1 is still with me today. I'm so proud. Other than my kids, he's the only one who still remembers when the company was run out of my home and my old Ford T-Bird. I remember clients used to say, hey, should we meet at your office or mine? Oh, no, let's meet at your office. I want to see what I'm promoting. Okay, now, fast forward. I've got 20 full-time employees. Some of them I'm paying as much as I was paid at Channel 4. 20 full-time, all but 2 are former journalists. I have this idea that who better to pitch the news than the news. So the only 2 who are not journalists are my son and my daughter, and they get a hall pass. My daughter's 32, she's my vice president. My son is 29, he's my kind of head of business development. So I get to build this thing with my kids. And then the most interesting thing that happened is my grandson, who's now 12, decided that Grandpa's company is kind of cool. Grandpa's company does cool things. They produce TV shows. And so now all of a sudden he's very invested. In fact, we had a little happy hour at the company and we invited about 130 people in, and we had this little speaker system, and I was introducing my son and my daughter, and I said, and my grandson is here. Caleb, get up here. So he grabs the mic. He says, my name is Caleb Hill, future owner of Real News Public Relations. So, I mean, how proud, you know, to think that this is, number one, not all kids want to work with their dad. And to have a multi-generational company makes me very proud. Okay, so let me tell you some tools that we do in our business every single day to build our business and attract new clients. Market. Okay, so thing 1 is getting people on the news. So Chris, if you'll be my Vanna, if you go to YouTube, I'm going to show you my very first client. My very first client is a guy named Clint David. He's a civil attorney here in town. He had never been on TV ever in his life, and he was one of the original 10 paying me $3,000 a month. So Clint David, that's it. Just go ahead and, yep, right there. I'm a pleaser. I'm a middle child. My love language is praise. Ask my wife. And I just want to be patted on the head. I want people to tell me how wonderful I am. So, son of a minister, middle child, it's a syndrome. So, Clint was over the top with the praise. He's like, Jeff Crilly, you're a rock star. What did I do without you, man? I don't know what life was like before you. I had 2 stations in my office today. That was great. Channel 4 and Channel 5, can you record them? Yeah, of course I'll record them. So then I would wake up the next morning and say, okay, I got them on Channel 4 and Channel 5 yesterday. Let me get them on Channel 8 and Channel 11 today. So I just watched the local reporters and see who was at a courthouse or covering a criminal trial. If I was working with Clint today, I would be preparing to put him out there on the subway massacre because the guy turned himself in, basically got caught. So, you know, what does he face? Blah, blah, blah. So in the legal world, there's a bus every 5 minutes. So how the story ends is I moved him from local to national. Can you click on that? So he learned how to talk in Dallas on local TV. And then I introduced him to Fox National. So why don't you just scroll through until you see him up full, Chris. TV likes bold people. There he is. TV likes blunt. And I taught Clint how to talk blunt. I said, TV hates gray. It loves black or white. Just be blunt, be bold, just tell it like it is. Let it fly. And so when twice a week, they're sending a town car from Fox News to his home or office. They're driving him downtown. He's talking to the Fox, Fox Business Channel. He does his little 5 minutes, 7 minutes, whatever it was on the network, and they would drive him back to the office. So into the first year, he calls me up and says, Jeff, I've got good news and bad news. I said, all right, please tell me the good news. Please praise me. He says, dude, you got me 500 media placements last year. 500. It probably could have been 700, but I had a firm to run. I said, okay, so what's the bad news? He says, Jeff, I don't need you anymore. They kind of call me direct. And because I'm such a pleaser, I didn't even hear you got fired. I heard the opposite of that. I heard you did too good a job and worked yourself out of a job. In fact, if a PR firm has to be fired because they over-delivered and you no longer need them, hire that PR firm. But the takeaway there for me, a pleaser, was don't take on clients you can't make happy, because I found the weight of a disappointed client is too much for me. We now have 140 clients on retainer. The smallest is an author at home. The largest is Walmart. And I want 140 clients to throw me a parade every month. If only 139 want to, and one is upset with me, it occupies too much of my headspace. So it just bothers me. I know who I am, right? I'm an excellent freak, and I just want to make people so pleased with me that they stand on the roof of their house and shout to all their friends, why are you not doing business with Jeff Crilly? So that might be meeting pearl number 2, which is if you're going to do it, create raving fans, over-deliver. The world is used to the minimum. They're used to the minimum. When they get something extraordinary, I call that extreme customer service, they're so delighted, they find the real deal, and then they tell all their friends. And nothing is better than a referral from a trusted person. They pretty much like check the box, okay, well, if Chris recommended you, you're in, let's get started, right? So over deliver. It's refreshingly different in this day and age, right? So then we didn't pivot because half of the income from the company is still get me on the news, print, radio, television, all over the country. We're making a bold promise, and I know no PR firm on the planet would ever make this promise. We're saying 30 media placements in 30 days, which works out to about $100 per placement. It's a bold thing. And when I say that, Josh, my head of operations, says, boss, I wish you wouldn't say that, because every once in a while I'll hit 28. And with the wrong client, they're like, you promised me 30, and we don't like those clients. And we're like, okay, you're going to be that guy. Okay, so anyway, I'm saying 30 in 30 days because I send out a daily email that now goes out to 35,000 journalists. I don't know if you don't have that in your computer someplace. So I won't show it to you. I showed it to you before the meeting. It's a daily tip sheet, and I've been doing it with just devotion every single day for 13 years. Not missing Christmas Day, not missing New Year's Day, for 13 years. So when people say, Jeff, when was your last day off? I know exactly when it was. It was November of 2008, because that's when I started this thing. So when my wife and I go on vacation, her first thought process is, okay, what's the Wi-Fi like? What time zone is it? Like, we have a friend who invites us to Santa Barbara every year, and I love Santa Barbara, but I hate that time zone. Because, we want to stay out late and have a couple glasses of an adult beverage, and I'm already thinking, oh gosh, I got to wake up instead of waking up at 5, I pretty much got to wake up at 3 in order to get it out to my list of journalists who, this is going to sound like an exaggeration, but it's not. If I'm late, I start getting emails from across the country. Hey, Jeff, I missed your email today. Is everything okay? Like, I have journalists that depend on my daily tips. So what are my daily tips? I'm basically hijacking the news, and this comes to another point. If you wanted to be on the news, you actually have to say, what am I an expert in, and what is my feeding frenzy? So you and I were kind of playing a game earlier. What are you an expert in? And we kind of landed on e-commerce. E-commerce is is a thing that the media understands. Many of you talk about something that's very techy, and journalists really don't talk tech. They talk to the masses. So when you started to tell me what you do, they were just words. It was Charlie Brown's teacher. I know he said some words that I recognize, but I don't know exactly what he does. And then I said, e-commerce? You're like, yeah, I could talk about e-commerce. And then on my phone, I put in e-commerce to Google. I pressed news. So Google is now sifting everything to news. Google tries to put the first news thing up first. In fact, why don't you do it? I'll show you what we found, which would be actually a very good topic for you. So go to Google and then put in e-commerce and then press send. Now press news right there.
Okay.
So now it's sifting. And what we found was, let's scroll down a little bit. We found, how e-commerce altered the trucking industry, and that was 1 day ago. Why is that interesting? Because we already have a trucker issue in the country. Like, we're short 80,000 truckers. Truckers are complaining about fuel prices. Truckers are already on the media's radar screen. I don't know what the article says, but you kind of look into it and see, what did the media miss? Because the media is a mile wide and an inch deep, and they often don't do a great job getting to the root of whatever problem they're talking about. So you could actually, this was an NBC article. Let's click on it. And if you scroll down a little bit, Dion Hampton. What I would do first, if I wanted to get on NBCnews.com, is I'd find out who that journalist is. Can you cut and paste that, or does it allow you to click on it? Does it allow you to click on it? Yeah. What you're doing is, this takes 5 minutes of homework. You want to find out, who is this dude? Does he write about the trucking industry? Does he write about e-commerce? Who is this dude? So you find the last 5 articles that he wrote. All of the NBC properties have the same email address. It's firstname.lastname@NBCUni for Univision.com. They're universal, unless they have 2 John Browns, and then it might be John.Brown1 at, okay. So once you find National Reporter, that's cool.
LinkedIn?
Yeah. Wow. Okay, go back. I saw another one. Let's try NBC authored. Yeah. He's based in Cincinnati. Oh, look, so he's trucker. That's his thing. He's on the trucker beat, right? Okay, so what I love is a subject line. What's his name, Dion?
Mm-hmm.
Dion, comma, great story, exclamation point. 1, it suggests praise. Wow, a fan. You compliment him on this wonderful article he just wrote about how e-commerce changed the trucking industry. And then you say, however, you missed a big point. If you have 2 minutes, call me back. I'd love to explain, because I think there's a great follow-up to the story, your wonderful article. So you didn't give him the goods yet. You didn't say what he missed. You complimented him. He knows it's going to be friendly. And so you try to get him on the phone. Why do you want to get him on the phone? That's where let's make a deal happens. I'm selling this. Are you buying this, Dion? That's what I'm talking about. You're getting on the phone. You say, hey, you failed to mention this, you failed to mention this, you failed to mention this. I think it was a wonderful article, but if your bosses like the article and they're thinking about doing more on e-commerce in the trucking industry, I'd love to help your readers with greater context for some of the things that you wrote. And you're playing let's make a deal with this guy. It's never a bad phone call. They never say, never call me again. It doesn't happen. They're goodwill ambassadors for their network, so they're all taught to be polite, even if you're going to blow somebody off. And we all know what a blow off sounds like on the phone, don't we? It's just like, oh yeah, sounds interesting. Yeah, send me something. That's a blow off. He's not doing shit with you. It was like, really? Okay, I knew nothing about this thing you just said. Okay, send me something. Send me your information. Send me your bio, and I'm going to put you on. I'll talk to my bosses in New York, and I'll get back to you because this guy's based in Cincinnati. Oh, and you'd say, by the way, go Bengals. Cincinnati. Come on, yeah. Yeah. So that's how you get yourself in the news. So right before the meeting started, I got a text message from Erin Jones with CBS 11 here in town. And she's grown to trust me because I become this resource to the media. I'm going to find your expert regardless of whether it helps me or not. And I was just kind of showing off. So last night I was at a networking event, a Success North Dallas, Bill Wallace thing. And this guy had come up from Houston, and he's kind of a workplace culture expert, and he wrote this best-selling book called Love is a Business Strategy. And I talked to him after the meeting, and I said, hey, we should get together. Anyway, he and his business associate came to tour our TV studios, and we agreed we liked each other, and we're going to do a Zoom call and talk about ways we could work together. And Erin Jones texted me. I couldn't get a hold of my paying client. I just texted him and said, hey, you want to be on CBS 11 tonight? Silence. But as a former reporter, I knew clock is ticking. She's a night person. She's got to get her expert or I lost out. So I said, hey, this guy from Houston hasn't hired me yet, but maybe this is a chance to show off. So I called him. His name is Frank. I said, hey, Frank, you want to be on CBS 11 here tonight, here in Dallas? He's like, yeah. I said, can you get to a Zoom? You got a laptop? No, I don't. We're on our way to dinner. I said, well, this is important. This is important. I mean, you need to make time for this. And I said, hold on for 1 second. I'll have the reporter explain her story. So I called Erin. She says, hey, Jeff, you got somebody for me? I said, yeah, I got a great guy. His name is Frank. He wrote a best-selling book. Merged the call. I said, hey, Frank, meet Erin. She's an amazing reporter. I'll let you kind of talk. I pressed mute because there was conversations going on in here, and I heard let's make a deal go on. And she says, this is wonderful. He says, I'm on my way to dinner. She says, well, could you pull over? We'll do this by Zoom real fast on your phone. He says, sure. And so he pulled over, and I've been getting text messages like, who are you? And this is amazing. I mean, really, think about that. I just met the dude at a speech last night, and now he's on CBS 11. So I'm saying that because the art of getting somebody on the news is simply watching the news, paying attention to what are they talking about. Are they talking about my story? And if they're talking about your story, jump. Clock is ticking. If you're listening to, like I like to say, I've got the Beatles channel. I'm a big Beatles fan. I love to listen to the Beatles. Most days I'm not listening to the Beatles. I'm listening to KRLD. I'm listening to CNBC. Occasionally I'll turn over to Fox News to hear what they're saying. Because why? I've got something like 50 clients that are paying me to get them on the news. I want to know when the feeding frenzy happens. So anyway, let me show you the kind of transition. Will you pull up your own, actually before you pull up your own podcast, would you pull up, go to YouTube. Yep. And then put into Real News Communications Network. That should probably do it. Real News Communications Network. So my daughter comes to me about 4 years ago, my now vice president. So if you scroll down a little bit, this one right here,
Oh, the one about Jones.
right here, yeah. So press it and just pause it for a second. Don't play it yet. You'll have to watch an ad. Okay, so my lovely daughter, the one that I held as a baby with the big blue eyes, says to me 4 years ago, she says, Daddy, I think we need to start a podcast division. And I laughed at her. I said, podcasting? Who listens to podcasts? She says, Daddy, my generation does. All those kids jogging on the Katy Trail, it's not music, it's podcasting. I said, all right, I'll trust you. Here's my card. Don't go crazy. So she spends about $2,000-3,000 on GoPros and no fancy lighting. We didn't even have ring lights in our first studio. It was overhead lighting, which is horrible. I mean, we all have raccoon eyes right now. It's not flattering. This is the worst light for attractiveness, right? So we set up these little GoPros and a board and headphones. And so we then had an office that was very small. It was 2,200 square feet at Lincoln Center, which is LBJ and the Tollway. We now have 8,000 square feet, same building. But then we had a small office. And so I'm giving people a tour of our offices. And I say, I'm pointing to the TV set. I said, we can get you on Fox. We can get you on CNN. They're like, oh, you got a radio studio? I said, yeah, we got a radio studio. We can get you on Fox. We can get you on, and they're like, no, let me see your radio studio. And they kind of wander in and they put the headphones on. And I taught my producers how to do the puppy dog close. The puppy dog close is the pet store owner who hands a little puppy dog to a little girl and says, why don't you just pet him for a minute? And then after 1 minute, she's looking up, please, Daddy, buy this puppy. So the puppy dog close in podcasting is, so if you did have a show, what would the show be about? I don't know. I don't know what the show would be about. Well, what are your interests? I love classic cars. Oh, cool. Well, why don't you do a classic car show? Yeah, that would be cool. So if you did have a classic car show, would it be your theme song? Is it like Get Your Motor Run? Yeah, I love that song. Okay, so what would you call the show? He says, I don't know. The car show? It was perfect. And so I taught my producers how to do the big voice announcer, and they're wearing headphones in this little studio with fluorescent lights. Get your motor run, and they'd find it on YouTube real fast. Within 30 seconds, they could create a fake show open, and you would hear "Get your motor run" and in your earphones, and then you're listening to the car show. Now here's your host, Joe Blow. Take it away. And this is what mystified me. This guy, who didn't even know he was going to do a mock show, says, welcome back to my show. This is a good one. You're going to love this one. We're going to talk about the classic Corvette today. And I'm talking about the early 60s classic Corvette. Guys, you know what I'm talking about. And I'm like, who is this guy? Where did this guy come from? I mean, this was a mock show, and he launched right into it. And then I said, what if I spent some money? So let's go ahead and play. This is a tour of our studios. I've now spent $1.4 million on television studios. And I've got the nicest studios in Dallas-Fort Worth. I basically, big $10,000 heavy acrylic anchor desk. It overlooks LBJ Freeway. This little division my daughter inspired now has 92 unique clients, including Chris. This studio we call Oprah. You can fit 50 people in here. 50 people clapping can look like 500 people clapping. That's my lovely daughter. You'll see Ted Nugent here in a second. That's Ted. His wife is a client of ours. They'll sometimes drive up from Waco and knock out 4 shows and leave. This one is, I call it Chip and Joanna. It's kind of homey. It's kind of intimate. So we have 10 studios under one roof in Dallas. We have a studio up at Grandscape, so if you'll find your own show. And then we have a studio in downtown Fort Worth. And this now makes up about 50% of our income. And we're not just doubling down, we're tripling down on this space because we believe the future is not, please Channel 8, please tell our story. The future is become Channel 8. Some of our shows are getting more views than traditional television because their numbers keep going down like this. And then something interesting happened. COVID, you saw all these big anchor people broadcasting from home on a ring light. And many of them, it looked very homemade. I mean, come on, get a better mic. I mean, really, that potted plant? Come on, you got nothing better than that? And it created like everything got equal. Suddenly, the amateur podcast at home with a ring light looked like commercial television. And then the media did 2 other things to themselves. They got terribly biased. Too far to the right, too far to the left, fake news, social media began to censor. So there's this perfect storm of people saying, the media, I don't trust them. They won't tell my story. And so now we're telling our clients, become the media. Tell your own story without filter. So, Chris, why don't you play a little bit of that? One, I give her high props. She's not reading a teleprompter. She's just speaking. It feels real. It doesn't feel plastic. So I love it that one, she's introducing herself to the viewer. Was that episode 1? That was a good use of episode 1. I'm going to give Chris some advice, and you guys can think about it as well. There's different reasons to do a show. You can do a show to build your brand. It's good marketing. Become a kind of an influencer. People are asking to be on your show. It makes you important, right? You're becoming the media. There's another reason to do a show, to get rich. Would you like to hear about that? So I promise you, will you pull up Jeff Crilly show? So my little Jeff Crilly show, the most I'll do is 3 a day. Today I did 2. Why do I do the show? Well, let's take this one. So you'll see one view. Yeah, Sanjay. Why don't you go ahead and play it? Go ahead and. Okay, so why did I invite Sanjay on the show? One, I need an immigration attorney. It's a big story. The media's talking about it. I currently don't have a single person who's hired me to get them on the news for immigration. And that drumbeat keeps getting louder and louder. Greg Abbott has sent buses to Washington, D.C. It seems to be coming to a head. So I've said to myself, let me get an immigration attorney to hire me. So I Googled immigration attorney Dallas, and he comes to the top on the Google ad spend. And I'm like, that cat's spending money. That's a tough term. It's not like, it's like divorce attorney. It's a very competitive term. So, Yeah.
Like Gary said.
I don't know on that one. Everyone I work with, they don't.
Okay, but I was looking through a different lens. I want to see who's spending money advertising. This guy is. So I send an email, and I'm going to give you the best subject line ever, Chris. Are you ready? 2 words together are magic. Media request is the subject line. So I sent it to this guy, and he writes back almost immediately. He's like, what's the catch? What's the cost? Is there a cost to this? And I just wrote him back. I said, no cost. It's a news show. And he says, cool. So he comes into the studio. I gave him the tour. You know, he sits on the Oprah couch. He sits on the anchor desk. He sits in the Chip and Joanna room. He comes in here. This is our actual working newsroom. We put these dramatic lights in here. That's my office right there. That's my son's office. And we do this nice little interview with him. After the show's over, I said to him, you know, you do a lot more than immigration, don't you? He says, yeah, criminal law. I said, you know, the hottest story in the country right now is this subway thing. Could you talk about that? He says, sure, I could talk about that. I said, they're going to catch this guy. I promise you, sometime in the next 48 hours, they're going to catch this guy. Would you be open to doing some media this week? You don't have to hire me. I just want you to see what I can do. And he says, sure. Yeah, I'd be glad to be thrown out to the media. I said, okay, cool. Because I did some research and I found that the last time I could tell that he was on TV was 10 years ago on Channel 4. There's a screenshot on his Facebook page of him on TV. So it's been a drought for this man. So I'm pulling in here, listening to news, as I always do, and I hear subway suspect turns himself in, gets arrested. In the parking lot, waiting for you guys, I text him. I said, hey, Sanjay, did you see he got arrested? Are you up to doing media tomorrow? He says, sure. So what am I going to do? Tomorrow morning, I am going to do a wonderful audition for this guy. I'm going to lead with him in tomorrow's morning tip sheet saying he's an attorney who practices a wide range of cases, including criminal law, or, you know, I'll wordsmith it. And then I'll put his picture from my show. I'll grab a screenshot from my show. I'll do his cell phone and his email. And then at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, I'm going to press send. And my prediction is he'll get 6 or 7 requests tomorrow. So for a guy who hasn't been on TV in 10 years, this is going to feel like an avalanche to this cat. So, okay, let's bring this back to you. How do you make money? You invite on people who would either become a client of yours or be a great referral partner. So for Chris, remind us again how you earn your living.
Small business, helping small business with marketing and Google business profiles.
Cool. Okay, so I would say an easy one for her is to, when you're at home, do you ever get these vanity magazines in the mail?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I get them too. I used to pitch them out. And I'm like, no, okay, somebody bought that cover because it's a vanity press that's mailed to me. I didn't buy it, it was mailed to me. But that beautiful husband and wife who's standing on the front page, they probably spent 10 grand to be on that front page. Okay, so media request, because maybe this person runs a small business. Media request. Hi, my name is Chris O'Connor. I caught your front page article in, you know, Collin County Living Today magazine. Very impressed with your small business. I would love to have you on my show to talk about your explosive growth, even during COVID. Here's a recent show that I did. Please let me know if you have availabilities on the following dates. You could send out 10 of these. My ratio is about 8 come back with yes, absolutely. Who doesn't want to talk about themselves? But before you invite them, you honestly start looking at the things that you do that they're not doing. So you check out their Facebook. Oh gosh, they need help here. They need help here. Google ads. I mean, all the stuff that you sell, you first find out, you know your Tylenol. You got to figure out what their headaches are. So even before they come on the show, you're figuring out, man, I got Tylenol. They got a headache. They don't even know they need my Tylenol. So they come on the show. You do the same thing that I do. Oh my goodness, this is amazing. What was it like during COVID? Were you scared? Blah, blah, blah. You do your show. And then after the show, she broadcasts from Grandscape, which is next to Nebraska Furniture Mart. Within 50 yards of the front door of our studios is like 3 different places to have a cocktail or a bite to eat. Have you done that? It's brilliant. That was one of the reasons why we chose that space at Grandscape, is that it's so convenient to just walk over there. So you're always telling the guests, you're saying, hey, as a way of thanking you for coming on my show, would it be okay if I treated you to lunch, an adult beverage, or an iced tea? There's several different places near the studio where we could go. And then after the show, this is where the magic happens. One, they've fallen in love with you. I think if you did a dopamine scan on the brain, it's lighting up like a Christmas tree. When you're talking about yourself under lights and cameras in a professional studio, it's just pinging like a Christmas tree. You come down off that high. Like, some of them are nervous. Have you had a guest who's like, oh my God, okay. So they really.
Yes, I won't tell somebody's secret. We had a little cocktail
Oh, good.
before.
But the fact, I love it that people get nervous before coming on my show or Chris's show. Why? Because we've created the same feeling that you would get at Channel 8. And if I can replicate the feeling that you get in commercial television, then I've scored. So then now they're coming down off that high. They're going to have an adult beverage with Chris. And then she's going to kind of casually glide from, man, you were so good on the show. You were so natural. I don't even know if you know what I do. No, you're like a TV host, right? Oh, well, I'm a TV host, but this is kind of a give back. What I really do is I help small businesses with growing pains. And in fact, you said something during the show that really piqued my interest. And now you're starting to identify a pain point that they have, knowing that they've got a budget. They just spent 10 grand to be on the front page of a community, mailer. They've got a budget. And then you start to identify 2 or 3 pain points. My discovery about life in general when it comes to marketing is if you ever told somebody they had a blemish, they can't unsee it. So, like, let's say Google, your Google ranking, if you help people with that. I don't know if you do. You say, I couldn't help noticing, I like to do my research. So when I was Googling your business to find out more about it, I just thought, because I'm a professional marketer, let's just see what their Google rank is organically. And then you take your laptop and you show them. You say, you're not on page 1. You're not on page 2. I actually had to go to page 5 to find the first mention of you. And I'm sorry, but like this guy, do you know this guy? He's number 1. He's like a dominant number 1. Do you know this guy? Oh my God, that guy's horrible. I can't believe he's number 1. What did you just do? You showed this person a pimple. Now all of a sudden they're like, why is my ranking not better? So Chris, you fixed that? You can help me with that? And then, yeah, absolutely. I have Tylenol for that. And then the other thing is I was on your Facebook and, you haven't posted recently. And now you're pointing out other things that you do. And before it's over, it's like, Chris, send me a proposal. I mean, yeah, what you do is what I need. I just didn't know that I needed it. I guess, yeah, thank you, Chris. So my point is, my little TV show makes my company $2 million a year. Nobody ever pays to get on it. They just come in and they're like, wow, you can create a TV show for me for like $500. You can get me on Fox. You can get me on CNN. Oh my goodness, Jeff Crilly, why don't we work together? And I also use it to vet. So I'm a happiness freak, and I call it a Thank God It's Monday company. We cater in daily for my 20, and we always have an extra 10 meals so guests can entertain their clients. And there's laughter in my little company every day. I mean, in fact, sometimes it's so loud. Were you in my office one day when they were all laughing? So my office is maybe 15 feet from our little break room where people from Tower 1 and Tower 2 come together to eat, and there's always laughter, and they're talking about each other's wife or boyfriend or girlfriend, and they're getting to know each other. It's like super glue inside a company. So another meeting pearl. Catering is a small price to pay to keep employees glued together, for those of you who have a physical business and people report to work. It's a wonderful way. I mean, how many businesses cater lunch? Not many. And for an employee who's, making, let's call it 50 grand a year, I don't know what you pay your people, that's a thing. Instead of going out, that's $7 a day. That's $10 a day. So we rarely lose anybody. And my point on telling that story was, I need to keep toxicity out of my company. So I honestly use my show as a way of vetting people. Yeah, they might have a budget for me. I might be successful with them getting them on the news, but are they going to be grateful? Are they going to praise my team? Or am I getting kind of a dark energy off of this person? And because I feel my primary job is to keep all evil energy out, if I feel a weird vibe from somebody, I just don't invite them into my office. I don't court them. I was like, thanks so much for coming on my show. You were great. We'll send you links, and please feel free to share them on social media. That's another point. I can honestly say I've never once done a bad Jeff Crilly show. Why? Because even if they never turned into a client, they're advertising for me. They're so proud of the thing that I created for them that they're blasting it out all over their social media, all over LinkedIn. And what's happening? Every time I do a show, I get 2 or 3 requests from their friends. Hey, you just interviewed my friend Sanjay. Can I tell you about my law firm? And then I'll quickly search and say, yes, I would love to have you as a guest on my show. Is this helpful?
Oh my God.
Okay.
Yes, extremely.
Did I run out of time? Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, when you were saying like, hey, so-and-so, that great article, hey, but you missed a couple points, and you mentioned that contact me, but how do you add the contact information?
Like you would put your cell phone in. Like what I like to do, I don't give them the whole pitch because they could blow you off. If they saw the whole pitch, they could say, no, not interested. But reporters always need to know what's behind door number 2. I mean, when I was in the news business and I'm hawking my book, I got a call one time at the news, at my office at Channel 4, and here's how the call went. He says, Jeff Crilly, I'm giving you 30 minutes to call me back, otherwise I'm calling Channel 8. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, they either heard my speech or they really have a story. They could have heard my book or read my book and they're using it against me, or maybe they really have a story. And I would call them back. I had to know what's behind door number 2. I didn't want them to calling Channel 8. Why? The person didn't tell me the whole thing. If they told me the whole thing on voicemail, I could instantly delete them and not even worry about it. So what I'm saying is that if you do get in contact with a reporter, create a little mystery. You missed something really big, or there's a follow-up and you need to talk to me. So reporters create storylines for themselves. They say, is he some whistleblower? What does he know? I mean, we create fantasies about what you might have. And so instant callback. And then if they don't call you back within 24 hours, send them another one. Just circling back, I want to give you the right of first refusal on this. Otherwise, I'll start contacting ABC and CBS. Now, yeah, like if they then don't call you back, they're a schmuck. Like they're either too busy because they don't know what you have. But now you've introduced the idea that I do have a good story and I'll start shopping it to other networks. I wanted you to have it first. And then they call you back, you begin with their favorite subject, which is them. Dion, you do such a great job. I read your transportation stuff. You get it, man. You get it. And the Walmart article, brilliantly written. But what I'd like to suggest is here's a couple things that you missed. And this is big. The news isn't talking about this. They'll talk about it in 3 months when this thing comes unraveled. But you could break this story, and here's what you missed. And you just have to give them a rock solid thing that's not too techy that they would get it. And the next thing you know, they're, okay, who are you again? What's your qualification? And I consider it an audition. Like when you're on the phone with a reporter, you're talking with passion, you're giving them sound bites. That's why so often, even somebody who hasn't hired me, let's suppose somebody comes into my office and they tell me a story, and I'm like, shit, that's a good story. That's a really good story. So I'll call one of the local reporters, and they all trust me. So they'll call me back immediately, or they'll say, Jeff, in a meeting, can this wait for 20 minutes? I'll say, absolutely, call me back when you can. So they call me back, I schmooze them. Hey, thank you for making time for this call. I just met this gentleman. He's here in my office right now. He's got an amazing story. Hold on for a second. His name is Sean. And I hand the phone, and then Sean tells the story to the journalist. And the journalist is listening for sound bites. They're listening to how does this person communicate? Because even when PR people used to pitch me experts, what I didn't know is, are they good on camera? Can they talk? Can they tap dance? Will they be boring? All of those questions are satisfied with the phone call because they're hearing what you would say to them. And it's magic. At worst case scenario, they say, hey, thank you for the phone call. I don't know if we can use that right now, but I'm going to save your email and I may be getting back to you in the future. Thank you for the phone call.
If they want goals, you have your 5-minute elevator pitch ready to go.
Yeah. And sometimes, like, I'll tell you a story. I had a client one time, he had started an electric go-kart place in Frisco. It was the first one. It was kind of new at the time. And his story was he was like a Wall Street stock guy, trader guy, and he was spending way too much time away from the family. His kids were getting older. He didn't want to raise them in New York anymore. He didn't want to be an absentee father. So he basically left this Wall Street life, moved to Texas, works with the family business, started the go-kart thing. So he said, hey, Jeff, could you get me on some local news stations? So I call up Steve Stoller. He was at Channel 8 for many years. And Steve was a buddy of mine. He used to report at Channel 4, so we knew each other for a long time. And so I called him at the right time. I knew when he had an afternoon meeting. Afternoon meetings start at 2, so I called him at about 1:30. I said, Steve, you got a story for today? He says, no, I don't have a story for today. What do you got? I said, cool electric go-kart place, first of its kind. He says, I don't know, Jeff. I don't know. I don't know. It sounds too fluffy. They're looking for something a little harder than that. I said, all right, well, how about this? I mean, he used to be a Wall Street trader. He kind of threw away the New York life to be with his kids, and he built a family business. And it's right there in Frisco, and it's a real, to me, kind of a sign of the times that people are saying, hey, I don't want to be on that hamster wheel too much longer away from the kids. He says, Jeff, I love this story. I'm going to call you back as soon as I'm out of my meeting. And then he called me back maybe half an hour later. He says, Jeff, tell your guy we're on our way. And for me, it's like, thank God I had a backup story. He didn't bite the first time. He didn't buy the first angle, but he bought the second angle. And so when I'm calling a journalist, sometimes I'll have story 1 and story 2 in my mind so I can pivot. Often, sometimes journalists will say, I'm so glad you called. I'm not buying what you're selling, but the station has me doing a story about blah, blah, blah. Could you talk about blah, blah, blah? And if you can, you're like, yeah, absolutely. I'm an expert in blah, blah, blah. In fact, we've been talking about that all day. I would love to be your soundbite. Again, I say the media is a mile wide and an inch deep. That's why you and I were playing around with the tech expert, just tech in general. It's broader, and truthfully, I could send you 3 articles on any subject and you would all be experts on that subject after reading the articles. Clint used to do, I would be in the car, I'm listening to KRLD, and they're talking about school prayer. And I remember this phone call was LP Phillips, who's still there today. He's a longtime journalist. I used to compete with him. I would see him at crime scenes and stuff. And they're talking about school prayer. And I said, let me get Clint on KRLD. And so I'd call up Clint, and it sounded hollow, like he's in the bathroom. I said, Clint, dude, if you're on the toilet, you don't have to answer this phone call. He says, hey, you're my PR man. I got to answer my PR. And then I heard a flush. I was like, Clint, this is getting too personal. I said, hey, Clint, do you want to be on KRLD? He says, sure, I'll be on KRLD. What am I talking about? School prayer. He says, I don't know anything about it, but if you send me a couple articles, I'll be an expert. And I said, okay, cool. I'll pull over, send him a couple articles. He says, yeah, piece of cake. And so I said, all right. He says, give me 15 minutes, Krill. Give me 15 minutes to just kind of look at this stuff, digest this stuff. So then I'd wait 15 minutes, and I'd call LP Phillips. I'd say, hey, LP, I got your guy. Clint David, I know you guys have used him before. He's good. He's got a silver tongue. He's your man. He says, yeah, we love Clint. Yeah, text me his phone number, and I'll call Clint to the follow-up on school prayer, because he had to do like 4 or 5 different editions of the same story, and they're looking for new angles. And so then I'm still driving in the car on my way to another appointment, and they said, coming up next, the follow-up to the school prayer story, we'll talk to a leading expert here in Dallas. That's coming up next. And then I'd pull over, and I'd get my little voice memo on my phone, and I would record Clint talking on KRLD on something he knew nothing about 30 minutes ago. And then I'd turn it into a little video and send it to him for social media. But I'm telling you, these are real stories. the media, sometimes they just need a soundbite and they don't feel like calling 15 other people. So I knew when Erin Jones from CBS 11 was contacting me, it's already 6 o'clock. She's got to be on the air at 10. So, man, she needed somebody, a warm body who could talk. So when my paying client couldn't do it, I'm like, this guy's going to be on the air. Promise. Beggars can't be chooser. She got a bird in the hand. He'll pull over and do a Zoom call. Done. Any other questions? You can tell I'll talk all night. People say, Jeff, you can talk as long as you want, but at about 8:30, everybody gets up and leaves. So, okay. Any other questions?
Do we have any questions from the audience?
Yeah, I've got a couple that come to mind. The first one, for small businesses that don't have a PR firm.
Yeah. Yeah.
DIY PR.
Yeah.
And they go out, they're trying to build a press release, and then they submit it to a station. Does that work? And if it doesn't work for the masses, how can it work? How can you get their attention?
So when I wrote the book, and it's funny, so I worked in TV news, for 20 years before writing the book. I'd been around press releases my entire adult life, but I was never the guy to get the press release first. So I actually had to ask an innocent question I had never asked before in my news career. I go up to the guy who sifts through press releases, and this is now 20 years ago. So this story is even worse today than it was back then. You guys remember fax machines? So I go up to this guy named Gary. Gary is the main number for the Fox 4 newsroom. He's an air traffic controller. He's listening to like 7 or 8 different scanners. They're all squawking. He's trying to recognize codes that represent murderers and stuff like that. He's also answering like 4 or 5 phones, and they're ringing with things like, why did you interrupt Judge Judy for this? I can't believe this severe weather thing is so bad that you're interrupting my show, Judge Judy. Okay, so this same person is answering these phone calls, and then he's also getting reporters and photographers coming up saying, why did you put me with Kaminer? Kaminer stinks. I hate to be in the car with Kaminer. And all he does is try to smoke in the car, and I'm sick of it. This is the guy who's getting the press release. So I go up to Gary. I said, hey, Gary, I'm writing a book on publicity. Can you demonstrate for me how quickly you read a press release? And this is back with fax machines. He grabs 20 faxes. He says, nope, maybe, nope. I said, Gary, how did you do that? He says, I just glanced at the headline. I said, what happens if there's a great story there? They just chose the wrong headline. And he says very arrogantly, if they're not smart enough to write a good press release, they don't deserve our coverage. And I went back to my desk and I actually felt sad because I know how long press releases take usually. Sometimes it can take a day. If you're sending it to legal for permission and proofreading, it can take a week. And I'm like, the world is going to be shocked to learn what really happens to press releases. So that was 20 years ago when I wrote the book. Guess what happens today? So my old newsroom, Channel 4, used to get 2,500 press releases a day. They now get 3,500 press releases a day. And so the air traffic controller today, most of it is just coming by email, pure email. And it's all New York firm press release promoting BS, right? So his screen is filling up with 25 emails, most of them lame press releases. And I don't know if you discovered this button. There's a button at the bottom of your email that says delete all. Have you guys discovered that button? So Gary presses delete all, 25 press releases disappear, and then 3 minutes later, it's back up again. And he's looking for police departments in Dallas-Fort Worth who sent a press release because that might represent if it bleeds, it leads. But anything else, he's delete all. And then these very expensive PR firms will call the newsroom, Gary, and it'll be, I joke, it's always Brandy with an I with a heart over the I. And she comes from this very expensive law firm or a PR firm, and she says, hi, yeah, Gary, my name is Brandy. I'm with Fleischman Hillard Public Relations. We just sent you an email. Did you get it? Truthfully, he has no idea. He says, Brandy, if you send it to news@kdfw.com, I'm sure we got it. And if anybody is interested, we'll be getting back with you. Click. So she goes back to her bosses. She says, I sent it out to, 100 news organizations, and I followed up with them, and they all got it. And they'll say, well, how many people are coming out? how many people are coming to the event, you know, the ribbon cutting, whatever the hell they're promoting. And she'll say, I don't know, they all got it. So then on the day of the ribbon cutting, nobody shows up from the media. Client is pissed. Brandy, what the hell happened? Where's all the media? You sent it to 100 news organizations. Where's all the media? And there's always an answer. Well, that was the day that Biden did. That was the day that Putin did. That was, remember, severe weather, that Rangers opening day. I mean, there's always an excuse. And this goes on for 3 or 4 months until they fire the PR firm because the firm didn't do anything. So one of the reasons I started Real News PR was to kind of teach the PR industry how to do their job. I've ignored the PR industry. I hang around journalists. I texted Erin, she's married to JD Miles from CBS 11. It's kind of a nepotism thing over there. I texted her after this. She was like, you're the best, Jeff. I texted her, hey, double date soon. We love JD. You'll love my wife. She did 10 years of TV news. We need to do a double date. I'm hanging around journalists because journalists can do my stories. And I'm wildly coloring outside the lines when it comes to building a PR firm and a podcast network. And my plan is to just rise to the, I've never gone to the DBJ and submitted my name for top PR firm in Dallas. I haven't given them financials or anything like that, but we're actually in bed with the DBJ. Their publisher comes in once a week, interviews all these Fortune 500 CEOs from our studios. So we're in bed with them. So whenever I get to the top, when I know that I'm financially the largest PR firm in Dallas, I'm just going to go to the publisher and say, hey, I'd like to present our numbers. And I think my industry will be shocked when out of the blue, I'm the #1 PR firm in Dallas. And it's because I didn't do what my industry does. So there's another meeting pearl. Just because your industry has always done it the same way doesn't mean it's right. Everybody who ever did anything really special in the world, Henry Ford, Zuckerberg, I mean, you name your hero, did it by ignoring the industry and reinventing stuff. So that's a long way of saying, if you wanted to do it yourself, you don't send a press release. You actually send an email to the reporter. Don't do the assignment desk. They're not invested in the story the way the reporter is. The reporter is invested because the reporter has an ego and wants to do a story that will make them look good. So you find the reporter who would do the story, direct email the reporter, and the good news is any PR person who knew how to do PR has already retired. So now you have a bunch of brandies in here who don't even watch the news. If the main anchor from Channel 8 came in here right now, they would have no idea who the main anchor was because they don't watch the news. So you have an advantage because all you have to do is find the reporter, put their name into YouTube, find some stories that they've done. I wouldn't make it the most recent story. I would actually make it a story from a year ago. And then your compliment is, let's JD Miles. JD, great story, exclamation point. He doesn't know whether you're complimenting him on a story that he did or you have a great story. He doesn't know. Either way, he reads it. It's not a press release. You start with his favorite subject. JD, I've been in the Dallas-Fort Worth area forever, been watching you for years. He's seriously been on the air now for about 30 years. JD is a veteran reporter here in Dallas. I used to compete with him. And then you say, hey, love your reports. Watch you as often as I can. My favorite story you did was actually 2 years ago when you were there when the boy that was lost from the Amber Alert was reunited with his mom. What an amazing story. I hope you submitted that for award because there wasn't a dry eye in the house when that story aired. Call me when you get a second. Great story for you. Haven't given it to anybody else. 214. Okay, what did you do? You said, I know who you are. I know what you do. You actually introduced him to a story that he loved from 2 years ago. How do you know he loved it? It's filled with flowery language. You can tell. It was emotional. He loved it. And then you're saying, I've got a story for you. I haven't shopped it to anybody else. Call me back. So you're trying to get him on the phone so you can say, I'm selling this. Are you buying this? And give a little give and take. And he can always say, but I don't know if I can get that past my bosses, and here's why. And I'm always learning stuff. When I'm on the phone with reporters, they're telling me, the news changes from year to year. I remember one time I was pitching Jeff Brady from Channel 8. He was a main anchor there. Do you remember Jeff Brady? So I was pitching Jeff Brady, and I pitched him a story, and he says, it's too warm and fuzzy, Jeff. It's too warm and fuzzy. We're looking for controversy these days. It has to be some kind of us against them. And at the time, I was representing both an addiction specialist. It was called Caron Treatment Centers. It was an addiction facility up in Collin County someplace. And I was also representing a guy who created an order beer app. This was back when apps are first coming out. And his thing was that, you could just pull up your app and order any beer and it would come delivered to you. And so when Jeff Brady did not buy the idea of the fluffy little order beer app, I decided to inject some controversy. And I called up my order beer guy. I said, would it be okay if I had another client on camera criticizing your company? He says, publicity's publicity. I said, okay, so I have an addiction treatment facility that I could get on camera saying that this is a horrible idea, because all of a sudden you're going to use like a 17-year-old delivery driver to decide whether or not you should get beer or not. It's a horrible idea. Teens could abuse the system. It's a horrible idea. So I decided not to give it to Jeff Brady. I called James Rose from Channel 4, my old colleague. I said, James, I got a good one for you. So there's this thing called Order Beer. And so they home deliver beer with just a push of a button. And I've got a client, an addiction company, who says this is a horrible idea. It's going to lead to widespread abuse. They'll both go on camera. He says, love it, Creel, love it. Give me both contact information and I'll put them on the news tonight. And so that was, to me, a big triumph. I learned, okay, they need controversy. I could create controversy. James Rose did it for Fox in Dallas, and then he sent it to New York, and it ran on all the affiliates across the country because they're a big syndicate. They grab stories from each other. I think I'm out of time. You guys are wonderful. I'm going to leave you my card. If anybody ever wants a tour of the studios, come on by.
It's phenomenal.
Thanks.
It'll blow your mind.
Do you film your podcast there?
Yes. Yes, although, let's see.
Sounds like you're being an ally of the news versus like the standard PR company is just trying to piggyback on them.
Well, what we do is we tell the client no. So client comes to us with a bad idea. It's a horrible idea. We tell them the truth. We say, nobody's going to care about that. It's not. Don't write a press release. Nobody cares about that. I know you love it. Tell your mom about it. But the media doesn't care about that. Let us do what we do, because I've never taken my journalist hat off. I say the goal is for your restaurant. Let's make it a restaurant. If we got hired by a restaurant and they announced we're putting tofu on the menu, and we want you guys to get that on the news, I would say no. Who cares? I've never watched the news and said, topping our news tonight, tofu's on the menu at Chili's. I mean, no, it's not news. Would you allow me to do what I do? Yeah, if you just want to be on the news, yeah. Okay, so let's talk about inflation. Let's talk about how much of the cost of beer, wine, meat is being passed on to the consumer. Let's talk about food inflation and how it's hitting the restaurant industry, and how you're the good guys. You're doing as much as you can to keep from passing this on to the customer. He says, love it. Be glad to talk about that. Now that is newsworthy. No?
Keeping costs down by taking the flavor.
Anyway, you guys are awesome.
Anybody have any other questions?
You still have your aggressive, was it 30 placements for, is that still on the table?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll talk to you after.
Okay, love it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jeff. All right, I've just got comments, no questions. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for showing up tonight. We appreciate you, and we will see you next month. Don't forget to show up and be part of the group. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. This was fun.
Wow, Jeff, that